Hello, everyone, and warm greetings from Singapore. Thank you so much for joining us today at Raja and Tan Asia's webinar titled Beyond Pandemic and Politics, Behold Southeast Asia and the World. I'm Sandy, a corporate M&A partner from our Singapore office, and it's a real privilege for me to facilitate discussions today at this breakout session on investment strategies and trends, spotlight on fundraising, investments, and M&A in Southeast Asia. So we know that all three breakout sessions have fascinating topics. Thank you very much for choosing to join ours. And because I have such an esteemed and experienced panel of speakers with me this afternoon, I would really like to encourage everyone to make good use of that time. Pose as many questions as you can think of on the Q&A. I've got colleagues here who will help to field those questions, and we'll get our panelists to work really, really hard in this 1 hour that we have with them. So we're almost 2 years into an unprecedented pandemic, and even before then, the investment and corporate community had witnessed significant disruptions and volatility, where VUCA is really the new normal. So as Southeast Asia's largest law firm network serving a global clientele, we thought it would be opportune at this time to organize this webinar for all our speakers and panelists to share their very valuable insights on trends and developments in our region with all our clients, partners, and friends. I cannot express enough my appreciation for all our panelists who made time for us today. Thank you very much. And since your time is precious, I'm going to maximize that by turning right now to all of you to get you to do all of the talking, or ideally most of the talking, including your own self-introduction. So in alphabetical order, maybe we'll start with Amit. Maybe if you could start the ball rolling.
Thanks, Sandy, for having us here, and great to be on a panel with such amazing gentlemen, Pak Fikri, Damien, and Edwin. Thank you for being part of this as well. So I am one of the partners of Jungle Ventures. We are a Singapore-based venture capital fund. We started about 8 years ago, and today we are one of the largest, if not the largest, early-stage venture funds in the region. We manage about 400 million today. We have investments across Southeast Asia and India. In the last 8 years, we probably have invested in 50 plus companies. A few of them have turned unicorns this year, so it's been a great year, banner year for Jungle. And have a team of about 25 people, majority of them based in Singapore, but we have on-the-ground presence now in Indonesia, Vietnam, and India. Glad to be here and share from our lens, what Southeast Asia entails.
Thanks, Amit. Really looking forward to that. Damien, if I could turn to you. You are with Economic Development Board of Singapore. For those of us who are Singaporeans or familiar with the region, we know how important EDB is as an organization to Singapore. And I tend to describe EDB as Singapore salesman to the world, to the investing world. But maybe if you could just tell us a bit more about what EDB does and therefore your role in EDB.
All right, thanks so much, Sandy. And thanks also to also for having me and on this esteemed panel as well. Right. So yes, so what you described about EDB, it's true, but it's I guess only part of it. I mean, we actually like to think that EDB is a bit more than being the sales organization for Singapore. I mean, that's what we do. We do promote Singapore to foreign investors to come and invest, whether you talk about manufacturing, R&D, or regional headquarters type activities. But but before we do the sales, we do have to make sure that Singapore as a product is attractive and competitive. So ultimately, that's also a critical thing of what we do in terms of then ensuring that the business environment in Singapore is conducive for business, that we have also the necessary capabilities, the infrastructure, right, down to the sector which we look after. Right. I mean, so it's not a broad-based just business environment or sectoral type or broad-based type of capabilities, but we go down to the specific industries we focus on, which includes all the manufacturing sectors as well as many of the exportable services sectors in Singapore. Right. So specifically for myself, I look after many of the planning and policy and strategy divisions in EDB. So that covers from human capital to resource development on the policy side. On the strategy side, I look after EDB's industrial strategies pertaining to environmental sustainability, agri-food, hub services, advanced manufacturing, amongst others. Thank you.
Thanks, Damien. All hot topics, at least from an investment perspective of the moment. So we'll come back to you on your portfolio in a bit. And Pak Fikri, I know he'll be too modest to say much about himself, so I'm just going to say it now, that he is widely recognized as one of Indonesia's most talented and top lawyers. And then maybe the rest to you, Pak Fikri.
Thank you, Sandy. Hi, everyone. Great to be here. I'm a partner at Asagaf Hamzah and Partners. Been there for more than 20 years now. Mainly do M&A, capital market, as well as banking finance. Asagaf Hamzah and Partners is part of Rajatan Asia. We joined the network about 7-8 years ago. And we are the largest law firm in Indonesia today. And we basically have wide spectrum of practice. Thanks, Sandy. Back to you.
Thanks, Pak Fikri. So the reason why I asked everybody to kind of do some self-introduction is really because I think for the benefit of our audience, so that you know their coverage and their profile, and if you have very pointed questions for any of the panelists, please feel free to shout out and name them specifically. My job is here to get them to share with us their very valuable experience. My job this afternoon is not to make their lives easy. So having said that, I think we're really very happy that we've assembled this panel because we're very confident that together this is a very diverse but experienced set of perspectives from the macro level, from the micro level, from the investor deal-making level, and as well as from the legal regulatory perspective, especially from Indonesia, which is the largest economy in Southeast Asia. So whilst we are waiting for your questions to flow in, I'm going to suggest that we start the ball rolling with some questions around, broadly speaking, I've structured it as the past, the present, the future. I would like all the panelists to share with us what they have learned in the past, and then in the 2 years that we've seen in terms of, well, pivoting and acceleration are keywords that get bandied around a lot. So what they think works, what doesn't work anymore, and then we look at the present trends as well as some crystal ball gazing into the future. So broadly, I will structure my questions that way. And if I could maybe start with Amit. So I think you've mentioned Jungle Ventures for 8 years, but actually you've really been in this part of the world investing for 1/4 of a century. An early pioneer and leader in the development of our region's venture cap industry. I think there is the Business Angels Network of Southeast Asia, which is actually the oldest and largest angel investment network, and you've helped scale that network in terms of impact and reach. So I really wanted to tap on that 25 years of experience. What do you think is key to investments and deal making in the region? And how much of that do you think is still relevant? And how much of that we just throw out the window because we think we live in the new normal now?
Sandy, thanks for reminding me how old I am, but I'll try and do my part here. But maybe I'll start off by sharing a little bit of an update on the overall ecosystem of venture capital globally and where we are placed, where Southeast Asia is placed amongst that. There is some reason to cheer there, and that's why the reason I wanted to share. So if you compare the first half of 2020 with the first half of 2021. Globally, venture capital dollars are crossing all kinds of thresholds. So it's one of the best periods that we've seen as far as venture capital goes. I think each of the regions, whether it is China, rest of Asia, Latin America, US, Europe, every region has grown, and the growth has been anywhere between 2x to 5.5x of more venture dollars have gotten into each of our markets, which is just an amazing number to think about, given that we are talking about hundreds of billions of dollars of investor money flowing into these regions. More importantly for us, this is the first year or the first period where the rest of Asia has surpassed China in terms of venture dollars. So if you look at the first half of 2021, China has consumed about $30 billion in venture capital, whereas the rest of Asia has consumed $34 billion of venture capital. And this has never happened before in the life cycle of venture industry, which is a phenomenal achievement for the region. It's a testament for all the hard work that Damien and everybody else has been putting into the region, quite frankly. So that's a sort of wonderful news. And even more importantly, the rest of Asia has been growing 50% faster than China. And so you can clearly see that South Asia, Southeast Asia, as a investment destination as far as technology and venture capital goes, is come of age, and is going to be a big part of global asset allocators. Specifically of Southeast Asia, we've done a phenomenal job. Again, in 2020, in the first half, we saw some $5.5 billion, majority of which came to Singapore, and then Indonesia came next. In this half of 2021, despite the pandemic, despite the fact that none of us have been able to travel, Southeast Asia has seen already $10 billion invested. So we've doubled the amount of investment that is flowing into our sector. And that's thanks to a lot of good work put by everyone here. So I thought I'll maybe just start with that to share that the fact is that the past in many cases, especially in this, is not going to be a reflection on the future. The future is going to be very, very different, very, very aggressive, very fast. And we all need to change our approach towards it. We need to recognize the pace of growth is unlike what we've ever seen in this part of the world, and be ready for it.
Thanks, Amit. I guess anecdotally, that's exactly how we feel as well as people who assist in deal makings, because we certainly see a lot of investments in this region, early stage. So really, it's more deals, bigger deals, faster deals, aggressive pace, and more is coming. And everything that we've learned in the past about how to do deals in this part of the world, we need to apply it all at a far more robust pace. And maybe from that perspective, we should turn to Damien, whom we've all credited for, well, from a government and macro perspective, obviously, the governments in the region have been doing something right. The ecosystem, I think, has finally reached maturity. So what is it that, Damien, you think are the things that are being done right, and what are these trends and developments that from a macro and industry or government level keeps you awake at night?
Yes, thanks so much, Sandy. Yes. So firstly, I mean, to add on to the points which Amit and Edwin have raised, right? I mean, which is really, I mean, despite the pandemic, which obviously, I mean, keeps, myself and also many of the government officials, awake at night. But despite that, actually, I mean, we still do actually see a lot of investment opportunities. And this can be seen, in terms of really how the foreign money inflow into Singapore has actually increased by 20%, even during the COVID time, so between January 2020 to January 2021. Right? And we see that there are principally three drivers or reasons for this. So one, which I think is very clear from what Amit and Edwin mentioned, right? We see more and more investment opportunities, and as a result, more funds establishing their bases in Singapore or expanding the amount of funds they manage, in Singapore, especially for the region. So, for instance, I mean, even we only have the numbers for 2019, but the numbers have generally been growing, and the amount of risk capital even during the pandemic has increased. So in 2019, the assets under management in Singapore grew in tandem with the rest of the world by 15%, so amounting to $2.9 trillion. Yeah. But the other two drivers actually, besides funds establishing or growing their bases in Singapore, is also about corporates seeking to grow in Asia and as a result doing more corporate venturing. And the other one is actually about family offices and setting up more of their funds, their offices in Singapore. So on the corporate venturing side, so we see that despite the pandemic, we see many corporates, right, looking harder to see how they can develop new businesses or new ventures, or pivot into new businesses. Right. So that's one reason why EDB, we just launched actually our new corporate venture launchpad, which is a pilot program aimed at supporting large and established Singapore-based companies to build ventures in new growth areas. And this one we see as particularly, important in actually helping to create new businesses, new growth drivers for Singapore, over and beyond startups. I mean, the normal kind of startups, generally from a Bain study, you only see 1 in 500 being able to scale successfully. But 1 in 8 corporate ventures, right, actually conversely, are able to scale successfully. So one such example where we see so far, right, in terms of new ventures being set up by corporates in Singapore would be one we just announced, which is venture between EDB as well as Schneider Electric, which is called Navic Solutions, looking to provide both power and cooling solutions as a service, right? So as part of the energy management service. And the other thing is also as corporates also look to accelerate their entry, into new businesses, we also then see more and more of them looking into doing M&A into Asia and from Singapore as well. On the family offices side, so we see then there are about 400 family offices now in Singapore, right? And many of them are driven by the investment opportunities we see, whether in digitalisation. A lot of them are going more actually in the ESG space as well, and philanthropy, sustainability, agri-food. I think these are major opportunities which we see in this space. Yeah. So I mean, going back to also what Sandy was asking in terms of what keeps us awake at night and things. So obviously, I mean, the role of hubs and everything, as actually our Minister Chan mentioned, right, will change, with the pandemic, with travel restrictions, with digitalization. And we do see that, companies, despite that, I mean, I think they still see an important, the importance of actually having key decision makers actually being concentrated in certain locations where actually the markets are fastest growing, right? Which also then provides them with safety, security, and trust, right? What we are a bit concerned with, though, I mean, is the fact that we're probably going to see more decentralization of activities, right? Especially for activities which maybe rely on a large pool of lower cost talent, right? Actually, digital could be one of them, actually, where it is an importance. It's a competitive space. There's high demand, right? But at the same time, there's a global shortage around the world. And so this is where then Singapore, besides developing our own talent, I think we also need to see how we can leverage on talent bases around the world as well. And that's one reason why we also want to work with the rest of the region. Like for instance, over in Indonesia, we are setting up North-Star Digital Park to see how we can tap on the talent base in Indonesia to be able to, support both not just the needs in Singapore, but support the needs of corporates in Singapore, which needs to service the rest of the region as well. Thanks.
Thanks, Damien. That's very comprehensive. And in fact, I think you've helped us answer some of the questions from the audience. I see a question just about the growth areas in a post-pandemic world. So Damien's helpfully outlined a lot of that for us in terms of ESG, sustainability, agri-food, and energy transition. I mean, so the EDB Schneider power cooling and energy management service. So I just want to pick up on that energy transition and maybe turn to Pak Fikri. I suppose as we talk about the sustainability and ESG and energy transition producing opportunities, albeit in a climate challenged world, how do you see that shaping out in Indonesia?
Yeah, thanks, Sandy. Maybe before I answer your question, I just want to echo what Amit, Edwin, and Damien were saying about deals coming into this region, specifically in Indonesia. I think Edwin mentioned the deal that we did in the past, which was probably becoming one of the biggest deals that we have ever involved for so many years. But since the last couple of years, I think every year we do. Last year alone, probably we do 3 or 4 deals, be it project finance, capital market, which at above $1 billion deals. This year, surprisingly, we're working on more than 5 deals, which are more than $1 billion, which I think for us is just amazing. We've never seen anything like this before. And although during the pandemic, everyone working from home, but still, we have this very significant deal flow in terms of amount and also the speed that the client wanted us to help them with. I think on that, just to add a little bit more, Indonesia also, I think, is becoming much easier and more ready to sort of to take on those deals, as long as I think few issues that normally would impact or would create problems in terms of deal execution. As long as the deal does not take on any government resources, whether it's concessions or in any other form, as well as when it does not involve land, for example, then I think in most cases it's much easier to do deals in Indonesia compared to a few years ago. In terms of energy transitions, Sandy, I think that's becoming one big agenda in Indonesia. I noted a lot of companies are looking at that and considering not just as a trend, but more with as a responsible citizen of the world, if you will, to see what they can do in order to transition. And I think also I think responsibility is one, but also the second is necessity. People see that it's something that cannot be avoided. If companies were to survive, then they would have to do what they can to if need be, pivot from their existing business and transition into businesses that are more cleaner and more responsible.
Thanks, Pak Fikri. Maybe this is a question for all panelists since we're on the topic of energy transition, because there is a fairly pointed question from the audience. What are the prospects for investments into clean tech energy in Southeast Asia, given that the regulatory framework is still developing? And which markets other than Singapore do you think will offer the most opportunities over the next 3 to 5 years? So whilst you're thinking about that, anecdotally, we would say that a lot of our clients, especially from Europe and the States, they are hunting for clean energy investment opportunities in the region. But across the board, I think the consensus has been that good investment opportunities are few and far between. And so maybe just to hear your thoughts on that. Amin?
Sure. I think at least from a venture capital lens, I would tend to agree that if I look at the number of companies we see on an annual basis and how many of those are coming from companies that are trying to attack some of these problems and challenges, I would think that it's still very early days. Singapore stands out for sure. There's a lot of research and development that the government has fueled, where there's IP sitting, which is looking to now get commercialized, and we are seeing companies, but there's still very early stages of those. I would think that if I go back and look at the general technology sector and the 2015 and 16 kind of stands out as a pivotal year when it became more mainstream. I would think that we are maybe at least 3-4 years away from that kind of pivotal moment for climate change, agri-tech, food tech, energy, all of these emerging sectors. But there's a lot of chatter. There's a lot of entrepreneurs talking about it. There's a lot of academics talking about technology. So I'm hopeful that we'll see a huge volume of such companies down the road.
Are there any countries that particularly stand out?
I think Indonesia has a very significant opportunities from renewable energy angle, geothermal, solar, wind. We have all the potential, and hydro. It's just I think some deals, some other energy sources are easier to do than the others. Solar, for example, I think there is already a feed-in tariff that is quite favorable in Indonesia. Geothermal is still, we have things, the government needs to sort out a few things before it can make it really interesting, but the potential is there. And I think lastly, I think the government is quite now with all the commitments that has been made by the government. I think the government are quite serious in looking at it and pushing really hard to make all these opportunities realized by of course investors.
Yeah.
Sorry, if I may add to that, sorry, Sandy. Also, I mean, in terms of renewables, I mean, obviously over the past 5 years plus minus, there has been an acceleration in terms of investments in Southeast Asia. Almost every Southeast Asian country has a target in terms of what is the percentage of their energy which is going to be supplied through renewables. Yeah, I think the key issue there is really in terms of the structuring of the deals, the ability of, let's say, the energy regulator there to actually help the private sector, to provide a regulatory environment, right, which is then ultimately conducive and lowers the risk of such projects, right? Because for some of the countries in Southeast Asia, for some of the projects, right, the risk profile is still actually relatively high. Most of the companies are actually going more for corporate financing type projects. Actually, ideally, to be able to spur more of these, you need more project financing, right? And that's where I see that as the regulations get clearer, as the governments also provide more incentive support as well to improve the financial attractiveness. That's where I think project financing, and then the green financing efforts and everything, which a lot of the banks in Singapore and in the region are also going into, can help spur more of these investments. Right? In the medium to longer term, actually beyond just renewables, I do see that, given that there are a lot of industries in the region like petrochemicals, refining, and so on, which are directly emitting, and it's not about electrification and renewables, but a lot of it is really about using technology like carbon capture, utilization and storage and hydrogen and so on. I think in the medium to longer term, as more and more countries in ASEAN also come on board and are committed to also decarbonizing their industry and not just their power sector, that there would then be opportunities in investments in this space as well.
Yeah. Sandy, I'm going to just make a 2-second add-on to that.
No need to be apologetic, please.
No, I just wanted to pay due regards to my portfolio, but make a point that I do feel that entrepreneurs, younger entrepreneurs, better understand the consumption patterns of the consumers of today, especially Southeast Asia, where a lot of them are young demographic. And I do see that there is going to be a lot of pull that is going to come from that generation in the next few years that's going to drive even more sort of incentive for people to act on it. We invested in a two-wheeler electric vehicle company out of Vietnam that we are also now sort of enabling them to go in across the region. And you've talked to the entrepreneur, and his ambition is to kind of completely transform the EV industry, and driven by the motivation that his peer group doesn't want to buy gas-powered bikes now. They just don't want to buy, but they don't have a credible alternative which understands who they are, where they're coming from, the challenges of the local market. They don't want to deal with just imported bikes and sort of rely on that. So I do think there's going to be a lot of pull that is going to come from the customer over the next few years that entrepreneurs are going to realize, and then that's going to maybe amplify the efforts that the governments are putting behind this.
Yeah. Thanks. Totally agree. I mean, I am mindful that one of the other breakout sessions is talking about strategy and trade strategy and sustainability. And the fact that I think people join this session, we do also want to make sure that they don't miss out on this entire sustainability discussion as well. So it's really been great to hear all of your input. And actually what I'm going to do now is because we are running short on time, I'm going to ask that you all unmute yourselves on so that I can very quickly roam through the questions that have come in on Q&A. And whoever has a view, please jump in. Don't waste time by saying sorry, Sandy, because Sandy's actually very happy to hear your views, as so would the audience. I think quite a few of these questions have centered around just politics. To what extent you think that, all these trends that we are seeing, has that taken into account the political factors or the political tension? To what extent have we taken into account recent government actions in China? So anyone has thoughts on those? There's also a question about how do you see the rise of the Asian century, and how do you see the impact of the rise of China in the countries in the region, as well as on cross-border M&As?
From my perspective, Sandy, I think we've been, Jungle is a homegrown Singapore-born venture capital fund that has gone regional. And we owe a lot of our success to the policies and the, and the frameworks that are set up by EDB and their sort of peers that have benefited the venture ecosystem, that is enabling more and more entrepreneurs and investments to come here. And I'm seeing that every government in the region is taking a leaf out of their book and also innovating on their side. And quite frankly, I think in an environment where, China in some senses hit a own goal by cutting down on some of the open market access that their technology world had, I think this is one of the best opportunities that our governments in this region have to weave ourselves into the global fabric, especially in the technology sector. So I'm hoping that every government in the region will continue to be open-minded. It's only bringing us more capital, jobs, global connectivity, and there's a huge headroom that we should continue to double down on in the near future.
Yeah. So there's a question that says the increase in PE and M&A activities in Southeast Asia has been heavily influenced by COVID. Will this trend continue post-pandemic? And listening to you, my guess is your answer is yes, because the time is now, the time is right, the fundamentals are here, and the region is increasingly mature and not a region that should be overlooked if you're on the hunt for opportunities. Would that be correct? Yep. So on that, maybe Damien, there was an early question just around, okay, maybe I'm not sure if they missed the right one, maybe Amit. There was an early question that was posted through Slido, and the question was just in terms of what happens to countries without strong government planning and support. And in those countries, are we saying that there are poor investment opportunities or a poor investment landscape? Or how do we view entrepreneurship in the region? Is it a top down? Is it a bottom up?
Again, I'm happy to start if that makes it easier. That's the problem of having a name that starts with A. You're always the first one to go in school.
And you're used to it.
And you're used to it. No, I'll just sort of quickly jump in here. If you look back in 2012, 2010, if you looked at the pipeline that we had, 9 out of 10 companies were Singapore-based companies, Singapore-based entrepreneurs. If I look at 2015, 16, Indonesia started to emerge in with good quality entrepreneurs in the deal flow. If I look at 2019, Vietnam started to emerge, Thailand started to emerge as a good quality deal flow. The volumes are picking up there as well. So I think as a region, we are not too far away from a point where entrepreneurship, entrepreneurs are seen as first-class citizens in every market, in every country. And that's a golden opportunity again, where we don't have one or two, or we probably have 3 or 4 startup hubs in the region that are driving a lot of that innovation and capital and jobs. So from my perspective, it's just a matter of time if it's not already happened in some countries. I see the DNA being the same of young people. They want to build their own thing. They don't want to work for their dad or moms. And they're all conscious of impact that their work is going to have on the world. And you'll see more of that sustainability flow into that as well.
If I may add, I think not all the government have the luxury like Singapore government, where it can go and make policies and go into a very granular level of planning, providing incentives and others. I think in Indonesia, I think it's been a position for quite a long time. I think the government generally, this kind of process is more of a bottom up, and the help that the government can give is by not meddling into the business and just sort of stay away and facilitate the process. Just make sure that everything can go smoothly, and with that approach, I think we can get significant new entrepreneurs like we've been getting so far.
Thanks, Pak Fikri. I actually wanted to pick up on one area that Damien talked about, family offices, and the fact that many have set up in Singapore. So these family offices, are they hunting for investments in the region, presumably? And maybe Edwin, Credit Suisse also has a very strong private wealth arm. Just wanted to get your insights as to how this might spur growth or investments or M&A opportunities in the region. And how, I think, in the past, we've always talked about how in this region, if you want to do deals or business, you need to know the families. In the Philippines, you need to know the few families, and in Indonesia, you need to know many of those families, right? So is that still very much the case, that you need the relationships, you need the ground knowledge, and you need to basically start small to build relationships and take a long view in investments in this region? Thanks, Edwin.
Let me add on that, Sandy. With Indonesian experience, if you see all the unicorns coming out from Indonesia, they're not related to any groups. In fact, the families, they came in too late into this game. For better or worse, I don't know, but certainly I think most of the tech players in Indonesia are independent entrepreneurs who really prove themselves to be able to implement their idea, grow their company, and convince the money that is coming mostly from Ahmed, Edwin, and the likes in the form of equity. So it's totally a different game with Indonesia 10, 20 years ago. And just on this note, I would think this what we now call a tech company, which essentially just a tech-enabled a company. I would not see them in a different light with other existing companies in Indonesia. These are the future of Indonesia. These are the type of company that will change the landscape, and these company will definitely sit on the top 10 market cap in IDX or other exchanges in the region.
One of the quick points I'll add here, you should keep an eye out for is these tech companies, these entrepreneurs actually doing consolidation with the non-tech companies. We're seeing that happen in India very aggressively. I think there's a company called PharmEasy which acquired one of the oldest healthcare providers in India just recently in a mega transaction. You're going to see that happen more and more. Is that the tech world will come buy these assets which are held by some of these older families in the countries, and tech enable them to create more value for everybody. So I continue to engage our entrepreneurs to think more like what Fikri is talking about, is to not get bound by the old rules of operating in our markets, but go and create their own independent paths.
Thank you. So there was that question from one of the audience members about who are the winners and losers in technology. And what I'm hearing is that there can be many, many winners, and even the losers, so to speak, from the old economy. There would also be opportunities for merger and consolidation. So with that, we are at 6 o'clock Singapore time, and I should very quickly just go around 1 minute for all of you to, as promised to the audience, give your thoughts as to what the future holds, or your thoughts or your advice as to what the future holds. And just before we do that, thank you very much once again for joining us. I'm actually extremely smug that we've really delivered 3 for the price of 1, because a lot of our session has also talked about tech and digitalization, which was the 3rd breakout session. But yes, okay, maybe I'll start with, since Amit will say I will start with him, I won't. Pak Fikri?
Yeah, probably. I spoke my future note too early. I would say in Indonesia definitely anything related to sustainability, ESG is a necessity, and companies are moving towards that, and it's a really a wide field, and now still relatively empty. So it's the first mover will definitely get the most advantage. And second, I think the tech. I think we should use a different name. I would prefer tech-enabled company will expand into the brick and mortar sector, and it's already there, and I think in Indonesia and elsewhere, I'm sure this will be the type of companies that will survive in the competition in the future.
So I just want to say, I think short-term wise on sustainability, because while technology plays beyond renewables are going to be more medium term, I think in the short term we're going to see a lot of opportunities in the carbon services space, right? And digitalization is also going to be an important horizontal enabler for that. And when I talk about then carbon services, this runs the gamut from legal services related to carbon to carbon trading to measurements, reporting, and verification. So I think that is an important growth opportunity, not necessarily just a startup play, right? But also actually in the financial and the legal services side, as well. I think the other major factor which will then drive also perhaps new opportunities is this move towards supply chain resilience. And so this will also then, that coupled with digitalization will also lead to dramatic changes in terms of how companies look to data for, let's say, supply chain visibility, right? How countries then will also want to actually see how they can, leverage technology to achieve security in critical commodities like food. That's where then agri-food comes in, right? So technologies related to urban farming and also alternative protein, I think these are really major opportunities in Singapore and in Southeast Asia.
Thank you. Thanks so much. Amit, we saved the best for last.
The problem of going late, Sandy, though, is that everything is spoken. You don't have a new insight to add. You have to mishmash.
So, Amit, you're either the first or the last.
Yeah, you're full of complaints, Amit.
No, I'm just kidding. So I think here what I'll do is, we are often the last people to realize the future, quite frankly. So I'm going to put myself in the head of our entrepreneurs, and I'll tell you what I'm hearing from them. And there are two key messages I keep hearing. The first message is around regionalization or globalization. Is that entrepreneurs sitting in Jakarta or Bangkok or Ho Chi Minh City or Mumbai or Singapore are not interested in being the number one in their home market. They are interested in being a number one across the region. And you'll see more and more of that. And those are the guys that will get larger, will get access to more capital, will become even more larger and consolidate the smaller players. So I think regional or global businesses coming out of this region is going to be a big trend as against to local technology winners only. Even an entrepreneur who's raising $1 million today is talking to us about that, is saying, how can I start that market and how do I go and get access to it? So that's one. And the second one is, I think in 2015 or 16, if you ask the entrepreneur what's the topmost concern you have in mind, it was always about demand and capital. The consumers were not yet there. Online was just starting to emerge as a big opportunity area, but it was not mainstream. Capital was obviously extremely under-indexed Southeast Asia back then. Embarrassingly, at $10 million, I had the largest fund in 2012 in Southeast Asia. Today, we are raising hundreds of millions of dollars in every vintage, right? So access to capital and demand was the topmost key concerns. And interestingly, today, nobody talks about it. Both of them are a given for the entrepreneurs on a day-to-day basis. The fight is for talent. The fight is for access to talent. And whether it is the trends what Damien is saying, Singapore companies will go to Indonesia, Vietnamese companies will try to come overseas. Access to talent continues to be a big area of, the entrepreneurs' mind space, and that's something to watch out for.
Thanks, Hamid, which in fact is also one of the questions from the audience, just about now that you don't recruit talent from down the road or in the country, what do you see is the impact? So to sum up, I really must thank all of you yet again, because I could feel a palpable sense of energy and excitement about what this region has to offer, the many opportunities, the young talent that we have, and the fact that we are really positioned to see the world as our hinterland, and we're no longer just talking about Southeast Asia. And that brings us very nicely to the end of our webinar, which is Behold Southeast Asia and the World. So with that, we'll sign out. Thank you very much, gentlemen. It's been a real pleasure having you, and thank you, audience, for your patience. Thank you all.